Hello world of YouTube and welcome to my listening log update for August of 2018. Like I said in my July update, I did want to get to a lot of albums, and I did. I got 13 under my belt this month. A lot of viewer requests were tackled. I have a few left in the queue still, but I did get through most of the ones that I had on my plate. Before I dive into it, I wanted to thank you guys for all of the support you guys gave me over the last month. All of the segments I seem to bring back or introduce seem to be met with really good reception, and I really appreciate that. I'm going out of town at the end of this week, and I hope to get a couple things filmed, but we'll see what ends up happening before then. But with that out of the way, let's get into it.
You need a big God.
And the first album I'm going to be talking about is actually the last album I was going to talk about in July's update, and that's the newest Florence and the Machine album, Highest Hope. My history with Florence is I enjoy their catalog. I think they're another relatively consistent indie band. I don't think they've had an outright flop. I just kind of think they've maintained this stagnancy while making subtle changes to their discography. I think that they've been getting more mature little by little as their discography goes along, and I think that they continue that path on Highest Hope. If you like Florence and the Machine, you're probably going to like this thing a lot. They're not one of my favorite bands in the scene, but I really like how they put their records together. I don't like how on this record they keep their very mature sound from their previous record and they mix it with the more airy soundscape that was present on like Ceremonials. This is a lot more hook-centric and chamber-centric, but it's not bad. I like that their lyricism is even more matured on tracks like Hunger and Big God, especially Hunger's really honest subject matter of dealing with eating disorders. I think that it's handled gracefully, and I like that they're kind of continuing to do what they do best. I think that she cuts through these mixes beautifully, and I think out of the post-Joanne collaborators, this is my least favorite, only because it's more like the same, but I do still enjoy how these guys write their music. I like how they construct their music, and I think that they're definitely still a great mainstay in the indie sphere. And I'm glad that Florence and the band is still able to write these very poignant tracks. Still really good, still really mature. Give it like a 7 out of 10.
I'm fresh out the dirt, bitch, I might go berserk. I kill everything, Kato find them up.
Out of all the rappers that stem from the post-Hobson 2010 boom that we kind of saw in rap music, I thought Jarren Benton was one of the more engaging and actually ferocious MCs on the mic. Out of anybody who was signed to Funk Volume when that was still a thing, I think he was the best that they had. I think he struck that balance of adolescent just miscreancy with actual lyrical depth the best. He was the best of that Frat Rap boom that we saw. Even before Funk Volume collapsed, I thought he was on a steady decline as far as his consistency and his projects. I think his mixtapes are still the best thing he's ever done. And on Yuck he's made probably his least interesting record to date. I don't know if it's because the adolescent shtick is running thin for me personally. He continues to embody this frat rap style of, I don't trust anybody, I just want bitches to suck my dick, and I want money mindset that just is overplayed in the genre of hip-hop, and he's not doing it in an interesting way. So I still think KETA is a hell of a producer in the genre. Some of the synth work is probably the best part of the record itself. These super auto-tuned, almost whiny, very Kanye-inspired hooks on like The Shooter do nothing for me. Godzilla harkens back to You Guessed It by OG Mako that I already don't like, so I'm not gonna like a reprise of it. Doesn't do anything for me. A lot of the features on here are stuff that you would imagine Jarren Benton to circle with, but it's pretty flaccid. I'm amazed he did a track with Hobson, but it doesn't do anything for me. A lot of the flows are very similar. They're very kind of not exactly triplet flows, but they're very monotonous when they're put on these type of low, lurky beats. They don't pop out to me, you know? And it doesn't help that Jarren sounds the most asleep on the mic than he has in a long time. I think the one thing that sets us above a complete disaster is some of that ferocity that he showcased on his earlier records comes out in doses. Moneybag, it's there to a smaller degree. Chewbacca, it's kind of there, but it's not consistent, and it's all in all pretty bland. I give this like a 4 out of 10. I don't know if it's, again, I've outgrown this or what, but it's just, it doesn't do anything for me like it used to.
Yeah, fuck that, I gotta up the ante. California girl, sweeter than...
So this wasn't a complete surprise that I didn't like Scorpion, but I have a lot of feelings about this record.
Kiki.
I think that this thing is just too goddamn long, and for Drake to release another album in a consecutive year that is that same bloated pacing of your typical Drake record, only now it's split into 2 discs, that's too much. And I'm talking as a guy who liked Views. I think Views is kind of shat on a little bit. It has some interesting ideas that are not brought back here, but by the end of this record, I'm just ready to stop listening to Drake for a couple of months. There's a good Drake album in this mix, but it's not here. It's not all of this. This is just too goddamn much. That show, the segment I debuted this past month, Redacted, I have an episode in mind for Scorpion, so I don't want to go too much into what I'd change about the record or what I think would make it better. But I will say, I think if Drake didn't half-ass his responses to Pusha T and either made an album about that or your typical Drake album, it'd be a lot better. Because there's a clear dichotomy between tracks that are what were obviously written before the Pusha T shit and tracks that were obviously written after the Pusha T shit. I think that some of the singles that have dropped either grew on me or are pretty damn good. I like some of the instrumentals on tracks like Summer Games and In My Feelings, or Nice for What, because they're very similar. I like Nice for What's a little more. Even God's Plan, I don't mind God's Plan's instrumental. I think it fits at least the title God's Plan. Even Sandra's Rose too. Sandra's Rose is a Drake track that reminds me of older Drake tracks in a good way. When I do my Redacted on that, I'll go a little more in depth as to what I do like. But I think that especially the shit that has to do with responding to Pusha T does not work for a majority of this record. I hate how a lot of the tracks in the tail end are like 2 different song ideas mashed together and neither of them work. He could have handled this so much better, especially for an artist like Drake. He could have made a better double album, but this is just abysmal. This is my least favorite Drake album. And it could be because I just think Drake should take a break. Drake releasing album after album after album after album for like 4 years is not doing him any favors. It doesn't really do many people that many favors in hip-hop if you follow my channel. I think Drake could have made a good record after record after record if he did more experimenting like he was doing, but this feels a little more lazier put together than even More Life, which was in itself a little lazy. But I give this thing like a 3 out of 10. It is a rough sit.
The hardest motherfucker that you know. If it ain't me, you a puto. Curry gets the flame, call a nigga Prince Zuko.
So the next album I actually listened to was a suggestion from someone who suggested a couple records before, my buddy Tyler. He and I differ on a lot of rappers, but we both really like Denzel Curry, so he was excited to see what I had to say about it. And what I said about Jarren Benton earlier in the video actually still stands for Denzel Curry. He's one of the more engaging guys that have come out in this post-Hobson boom. He doesn't lie on jock rap laurels as much as those guys. He still has his kind of flex tracks, his bangers, but he does them in a way that's still so very engaging. And it has part to do with the fact that Denzel Curry just goes to almost MC Rod levels of just shouting on the mic. He gets so into his cuts, and it makes you more engaged as a listener. I wish more dudes who do this jock rap shit that I'm sick of would listen to him and at least try to borrow some of his ideas, because it would maybe make that subgenre of hip-hop more interesting. It's bold for a guy in his lane to do this kind of 3-act structure to a record. I think that the gradual descent of light into dark works. I think its pacing is handled gracefully. I do like a lot of the instrumental work. Tracks like Black Balloons and Cash Maniac remind me of almost some Good Kid, Mad City offcuts. They're really that kind of West Coast influence without, again, resting on the laurels of that subgenre too heavily. The dark section is super menacing. The track with JPEG Mafia is fucking cool. I like that really lurching synth line that's in there. But again, because of how he writes his lines, because of his reference work, and because of how he does it, it's an engaging listen the entire time. I knew I was going to like this thing, though, I figured, because Denzel doesn't really disappoint. Imperial was one of my albums of the year that it dropped, and I had high hopes for this, and he more than exceeded my expectation. If any rapper's going to take notes on anybody, they should do it for Denzel Curry, because he's doing it right. I give it like an 8 out of 10. Phenomenal work. Can't wait to see what you got coming up next. So the next album I was requested to check out, it was requested for me a couple times. A couple of you guys have been wanting for me to talk about this because I like the heavier music, so. But it's the newest Judas Priest record, Firepower, and Judas Priest need no introduction. They're classic vets in the genre. Your Screamer for Vengeances, your Painkillers, your Defenders of the Faith, and your British Steels. Those are all really great records. They're post-Golden Age work. They've been very inconsistent. And I didn't have many hopes for this record, only because, again, it's Judas Priest in 2018. But this was actually really fucking good. I know a lot of the internet's already talked about this. It's gotten accolades out the ass, but for good reason. The soundscape is very akin to those kind of modern metal ideals, so if you're not a fan of punchier drum work, kind of clean guitar with a little bit of edge to it, you're not really going to be sold on this from that perspective. But these guys have written some really sinister cuts here, sinister even for Judas Priest. Like, this is more akin to stuff like Ghost should be writing. You know, Ghost gets a little hokey at times, but this is definitely more influenced by your King Diamonds, you know, your Diamond Heads. Those bands that were big even during Judas Priest's, golden age, they drew a lot more influence from them, and I think it benefited to their craft. Their newer work has been more atmospheric, and I like that they've put a little more energy into their guitars. Tracks like Firepower and Necromancer, and even a track like Flamethrower that I'm not that big on, I at least like that it has a driving energy, a more amped mindset. You know, these guys definitely injected a lot of well-needed character into their work again, and I like that they're writing these more devilishly tinged lyrics. They paint these really dark, macabre images in the lyrics that work really well. This is on par with your Screaming for Vengeances and your Defenders of the Faith. This is definitely on par with that, and I feel like, again, if we're talking about newer bands drawing influence, I hope that other bands that do this kind of macabre metal shtick look at this and look more at those older Merciful Fate records and take another listen to them and hopefully get a little more of their own character into that style, because I was wholly surprised by this thing, and I think that it's worth your time, especially if you like that older style of metal and you want a band that you may have used to love their classics still prove that they got it. Again, I give this thing like an 8 out of 10. Wholly worth your time. Fantastic listen. And thank you for the requests for this to all the people that have been throwing it my way.
Something like a Here Comes Jumbo, American as gumbo.
So the next record I checked out was not necessarily a request, but it's one that one of my buddies, Evan, who is a part of the new channel, I'm a part of Major Sales. If you haven't watched that, go do so. It's his favorite band, Punch Brothers, and their newest record, Ashore. And never heard of these guys. I listened to them with him and now on my own. They're labeled as progressive bluegrass, but that's really the best way to describe them. They have very high concept lyric sheets with a little more panache to their playing than your typical ramshackle put together bluegrass band. It's still got that kind of earnestness to its production, and that's even evident on this record, but there's a little more thought put into where they put what stringed instrument. And I pay these guys some respects. That's really admirable, and I like the very detailed nuance to their lyrics that are present here. The title track, Ashore, being about these kind of families that are coming to America and are facing their own hardships. Jumbo being this track about Trump, but in a very tongue-in-cheek way that's backed by this instrumental that fits right in with like a Pixar movie. I don't know, it's weird. It's really jolly and upbeat, but it's so addictive, and I love the way that they string their lyrics together. There's even some instrumentals on here, like 3 Dots and a Dash, that are just well-constructed, progressive bluegrass. Like, it's like if a prog rock band were a bluegrass band, and it's really cool. It's a really interesting listen. I will say I'm not the biggest bluegrass fan, so your love of bluegrass will dictate your mileage with this record. As a fan of prog rock, I think that kind of played into my liking of this record more. Other tracks like The Gardener is another really well-written kind of piece, and I think that for a band that's very rooted in progressive music, they also are really good at writing a hook. There are some just earworms, just lyrical earworms and melodical earworms that work their way into this. Like the lead riff of Jungle Bird, which is another beautiful instrumental, or the verse cadence of It's All a Part of the Plan, or the hook of Jumbo. That song's hook is fucking cocaine. That, in tandem with their masterful playing, are just things that I can appreciate. And I do thank Evan for pushing this onto me. If you can respect some well-written music, regardless of its genre, you'll find something to enjoy in this. Give it like a 7 out of 10. It's really good. It's worth your time in that regard.
Nowadays they need to let the rappers rap. Facts is facts and the fact is trappers trap.
One of the more questioning things that I'd seen in music in recent years was a veteran in the backpacker scene like Murs getting signed to Tech Nine's Strange Music label. I still think it's a weird anomaly in hip-hop because Murs is not that kind of rapper, and I feel like he's not the type of rapper that could stick to that label's stringent release schedule, which I still don't understand well. But given this is his 3rd release on this label, it's a lot better than I thought it would be. I've been listening to Murs since college. One of my classmates gave me some of his tapes and the projects he did with Slug from Atmosphere, Felt. And I like how he raps. I like how he constructs himself. And I like that he's very reflective. He's very conscious. Those are all things I really like about Murs. And he has that on this record in some really hefty doses, especially the first couple of tracks where he talks about getting divorced from his wife, why he's been staying out of the public eye, his stillborn child. Like, he talks about some heavy subjects while balancing that with songs about superhero parties. It's a little weird. There's not much of a tonal consistency, but I think it's understandable given the heavy subject matter. My only issue with this record is middle section of the record where he talks just kind of your open-ended or your kind of nothing rap subjects like drugs and drinking, and he hops on the bro rap train for a while and raps about how trap is dumb and shouldn't be a thing, and I'm just tired of hearing that in hip-hop. You know, I just wish rappers would just stop judging others if you do not want to be judged. But who am I to talk? I'm a critic. None of you guys like me. But even on those tracks, they're at least handled well behind the scenes. Michael Seven Summers, the house producer of Strange Music, usually puts together some really good instrumentals, and they're evident here. I mean, whether he's trying to set a serious tone with some piano work, he's livening up the mix with some really fun instrumentals. Seven does his thing, and he still does it well. There's a reason why I feel like Murs went to him to make a record with him, because they're both talented guys. They both know how to make good hip-hop. And even the tracks that I don't like by Murs lyrically, Seven usually makes up for it with a really good instrumental. And even then, Murs at least spits about those subjects in an interesting way. If you like jock rap, if you like strange music, you'll like this. My walk away from this is, I still think Murs can rap. He picked a good producer, and it's better than average as a result because of that. I give it like a 7 out of 10. Again, jock rap fans mostly only will like this one.
Gonna be alright. Gonna be alright.
Continuing on the rap trend, because I was just all about hip-hop, I guess, this month, Mac Miller's latest record, Swimming, was the next thing I decided to listen to. And like Murs, I've been listening to Mac Miller since college. I think he's had a more interesting run than I think anybody would have given him credit for, given that he started his career by rapping over Fireflies by Owl City. But He has some interesting mixtapes under his belt. His last record, The Divine Feminine, was actually well put together. I liked the jazzy instrumentals, I liked the soulful features he had, and I liked the concept of the record. So I had high hopes for Swimming. It's pretty fucking average. I don't know what the fuck happened, but Mac Miller just stopped giving a shit. A lot of his bars on here are boring. His, like, gravelly voice that he's always rapped with is the most annoying on this record. And it's not that the instrumentals are bad. I like these kind of lo-fi hip-hop beats to study to atmosphere that a lot of this record has. I like the jazzy nuance on a lot of these instrumentals. But I feel like Mac Miller's just not rapping about anything interesting this time around. I mean, the hooks aren't anything. And I think it's because there's no features this time around. And I guess what I'm saying is Mac Miller is only good if he has other people with him. That's not true, and I don't know if he was just trying to match the vibe of the instrumentals, but, like, he just had a lot more panache on records like Faces and The Divine Feminine. He just sounded more lively. And there's pockets of that here, but it's not in the kind of quantities that I would expect from Mac Miller. It makes sense when you see an article that Mac Miller wants to make an album with Post Malone, because they're both very similar type of artists. They're very laid back, they're very chill, and I feel like an album with them together would be fun to listen to. This album kind of washes over you in a wave of mediocrity. Give it like a 5 out of 10. There's not really much here that I can say is great outside of its instrumental work, which is really nice. I like these fusions of instrumentals, and I wanted a lot more from him. Maybe if he does an album with Post Malone, it'll be better. The next album, a request from a guy. Requests a lot of music on the channel. I'm gonna get it right this time. Random rock and real riffs and reviews. The new Tremonti record, A Dying Machine. The rock critic in his review said, your appreciation of this subgenre of music will dictate how you feel. And I haven't listened to this type of music in a long time. I don't really like these clean mixed post-2010s hard rock sound. Doesn't really do anything for me. Tremonti's a capable guitarist, but like I said in my review of Miles Kennedy's record, I'm not the biggest fan of like Alter Bridge and Creed, and this is just more of that style. I feel like me 8, 9 years ago would have been all over this, because I liked shit like Mutiny Within a lot. But as it stands in 2018, I don't. Tremonti, again, capable guitarist, he's a capable singer, you know, but it's nothing on this record is anything I would write home about. The one big thing that detracts it down more for me is it's too fucking long. This album is like 6 songs too long, and each song is structured so abhorrently. I think it's cool to have a concept album, and there's clearly a concept here. Tracks like From First to Last and From the Sky and Bringer of War all kind of feel like they're telling this story in a loose way, and I can respect that, but I don't like a lot here, and I'm sorry, because I know you really wanted me to like this thing, but I just don't. The one thing that sets it above like other records that I've given lower ratings in this video and throughout the year is he's a capable musician. I can see that, and I can respect that a lot more than, you know, some of the other releases that I've criticized this year really, really harshly. So I give it like a 5 out of 10. It's average. If you like shit like Alter Bridge and Mutiny Within and those kind of hard rock bands that play fast, this is for you. But it's not for me.
Oh my God, I'm gonna crumble so hard.
Another album that I was incredibly excited for was this one. The newest Ninja Sex Party album, Cool Patrol. I have had friends that have talked about this record that may not have been the biggest fans of it, which I understand. Comedy is subjective. I try not to give anybody shit for that. But I will say, even though this fulfills a dream of mine that I've wanted since Ninja Sex Party started working with Tupperware Remix Party, it does not come as close to the quality that was present on their last couple of original records. I think some of the songs, they work. I like more of the songs than maybe your average non-NSP fan. I'm not a big fan of First Date, and even like Courtship of the Mermaid. They don't do anything for me. They're just not that funny. I think some of the tracks on here are great. I like the whole cheerleading version of Go Fuck Yourself. Eating Food in the Shower actually is funnier now than it was when it first came out to me. I like that they're injecting a little bit of heart into some of their comedy music. Like on the title track, even if I don't like the title track all that much. And Danny Don't You Know, which I think is a really great song. I think it's a song that could make them some sort of namesake in some circles because it is more of an earnest song. Danny's vocals are the best on there out of their original work than your typical NSP track. And the whole fullness of having a band, a backing band, benefits the most on here. I even like the bass line on Smooth Talkin', and I like the idea of Smooth Talkin'. Orgy for One has a really good hook. There's stuff here that works. But as an NSP fan, I can't help but be a little let down by this. Only because I feel like the writing just isn't as strong in some instances. And maybe that's because they're balancing this with another covers album, with another Starbomb record. I don't know. But I do hope they continue to make this original stuff. They don't just do covers. And I hope that the next one is better than this. But maybe that's just me. I do give it like a 6 out of 10 because the full band helps save some of the album's lesser moments. And there are some really strong, funny tracks here as well. My buddy Austin requested this record a couple months ago, and I finally found it because this record was fucking impossible to find. It is the album Una Vita in CAPSLOCK by the Italian experimental electronic hip-hop group Miss KETA. I don't know that much about them, other than they're right up my alley. I like this very breathy, almost sensual flow, I guess you could put it. This reminds me less of hip-hop and more of just electronic music that came out in the early 90s that was probably very Coke-inspired. I can imagine this being the backbeat for a very neon-clad, Coke-fueled movie with lots of sex and ultra-violence. I like a lot here. I think even some of the interludes like Inferno, which get really noisy, really grimy, almost industrial tinged. I love that shit. I like a lot of the very jilted and disorienting and distorted instrumental backbeats. And again, that breathy delivery by their singer, rapper, whatever, does a lot for me. You know, I may not completely understand what they're saying because it's in Italian, but I don't think that's the point here. I think that's their vocalist is also more of a texture. The fact that they repeat the title on these tracks ad nauseum kind of lends itself to that as well. And I think it's good. If you like really abrasive electronic music, I give it like a 7. Thank you, Austin, for the suggestion. And I hope that you suggest something else soon. I'm actually kind of stoked to talk about these guys on the channel because I have a lot of respect for their heyday material, and I enjoy their newer material for a different reason. Talking about these Seattle icons. Alice in Chains. This was kind of requested. It was suggested for me to check it out, and it was already on my docket, and I was going to try to get to it this month, so that just gave me more incentive to do so. I like their post-Lane Staley stuff. I think that it's kind of in a smaller facet akin to when AC/DC had to replace Bon Scott. You know, Lane Staley was a very distinct vocalist for that band, and it helped that the rest of the band had this kind of very rugged sound to their guitars, but him and Jerry Cantrell's harmonies were a crucial part of that band's sound, and it was going to be hard to replace that. And I kind of like what they've done with William Duvall. I do have some issues with it, but I at least like their return, Black Gives Way to Blue, and I was excited for this new record, Rainier Fog. They were recording it back in Seattle. They were trying to tap into that sound that they were known for, and I feel like they do to some degree. I think that there's some of the production work and guitar lines on like Red Giant and Drone that really remind me of their Golden Age material, but I do feel like there's something missing here that was sort of present on Black Gives Way to Blue, and that's their more, I don't want to say their softer side, like tracks like I Stay Away, where they got to use their vocal work and their writing in a different way. It's not really present here that much. Black Gives Way to Blue had not the continuations of their self-titled, but it felt very akin to that in a more modern way. And Rainier Fog has doses of that. The opener, The One You Know, has that. Deaf Ears Blind Eyes has touches of that as well. There's bits of that are there. But I feel like those modern production ideals that were present on Black Gives Way to Blue that kind of set it apart don't mesh well with the kind of 90s production style that they're trying to go with on here too. There's a lot of clashing behind the mix on this record. There's still some songs on here that could use a little trimming, little retooling to make them flow a little better, and you know, that's a little bit of a disappointment. There's still a heart here that is very reminiscent of Alice in Chains, and that's why I do enjoy it. I do like a good chunk of this record, but not as much as I was hoping to. I give it like a 6 out of 10. Again, good heart, good foundation in some facets, but they don't build upon it that well this time around. And the last album I'm talking about today is another suggestion, Rivers of Nihil, Where Owls Know My Name. Never heard of these guys. G-Man Yoki threw them my way, or Garrett, that's what you wanted me to call you. Frequent requester on the channel as well. I looked at this thing and I thought, man, I'm either going to love it or I'm going to hate it, because it's got that magical word, that magical metal word, that genty word, that I'm really not the biggest fan of anymore. But he said it's got a lot more technical death metal aspects, and there's a saxophone player in this band, which I think is really interesting. So I tried to keep my hopes high, and I will say, they weren't completely dashed. There's a lot of interesting ideas on this thing, but I wish these guys were more bold. They give me this very clean, pristine production that is coding a lot of modern metal that I don't care about. I don't feel like bands outside of Meshuggah utilize them well. There have been some releases, and this, again, uses it to its own benefit in some regards, but I'm just tired of it. Outside of those, there's some good shit here. The track Terrestria 3 Wither, I like that it's kind of this just electronic kind of song that has some cool ideas thrown into it. I like the presence of the saxophone when it's here, because it's weird for a death metal band to have a saxophone player. And he's a good saxophone player. He can play his shit. The first track is a little more promising, or the first real track, The Silent Life, has some promise. It's got those production ideals, but when they do these more interesting guitar passages with the saxophone, with these harsh vocals, it's cool. But tracks like A Home and Old Nothing don't do anything for me. They're very normal. They're very bland metal. Some say I'm really harsh on hip-hop, but I'm also really harsh on metal music, and I'm just really tired of these production ideas. What passages here that do excite me do it very well, and they are talented musicians that keep a tight package together. And I do like the saxophone when it's here. I think it gives a nice texture to this extreme style of metal, so I'm giving it like a 7 out of 10. Thank you for the suggestion. And that's gonna be the month. I really enjoyed talking about this. I don't have a whole lot up for plate in September, but I am gonna be...
Hey, Johnny, do Kamikaze!
No.
Review it, Johnny! Do Kamikaze, Johnny!
No. Why? I don't wanna... I'll do it in September.
I need to hear it! Do it, Kamikaze!
Fine. Fine.
Lucky me, fuck you think. I got
of mentions. Still, I don't have any manners.
Eminem dropped a surprise album called Kamikaze. It's his 10th record. I have talked semi-extensively about Eminem. I reviewed his career up through Recovery, I think. That was also, like, 9 years ago. So, like, even while I was, like, a little more warm to his projects then, as the years have gone on, and I've become more of just a cynical son of a bitch, he didn't really do anything for me. And even then, I was never the most warm to his post-Eminem show material. It's a man who is 45 years old, spending 45 minutes of everybody's time, for the most part, telling the world why everybody's wrong. My album was good, guys. And I know he's self-aware to that. Paul Rosenberg tells him, hey, don't you think critics are gonna slam you for making an album defending an album that nobody likes? But it's true. This album sucks. The instrumentals, some of them are decent. I like the ones to The Ringer, Greatest, and Lucky You. Even Kamikaze's instrumental, the title track, has a really energetic, erratic instrumental that I think fits the tone of the song, but Eminem needs to fucking stop. Like, going after dudes like Tyler, the Creator, that are 20 years younger than him, it's just sad, dude. If you really are the greatest, you don't really need to affirm that by going after everybody that's already a fan of yours. And I mean, I'm not gonna get into the whole controversy thing, because everybody's talking about that. It's stupid. Eminem's known for controversy, so this isn't a new thing for him. So, everyone's giving him the reaction that he wants. This record is just sad. I think it's interesting that 2 albums ago, you were working to make a song about how you may have been a little too mean to your mom in the past. And maybe she wasn't the only one to blame. And 2 albums later, you are more juvenile and have backtracked so much philosophically that you're almost like a parody of yourself. The tracks where he's not complaining about, or people complaining about Revival, aren't much better either. They almost remind me of Hobson cuts, not in a good way. And his flow, his fast chopper flow, it's just Mac Lethal's. If you want that flow without a sad lyric sheet behind it, go listen to Mac Lethal. I didn't mean to come off as aggressively as I have, but I see so many people giving Eminem a pass, and it's bullshit. I understand if people genuinely like this record, and there are people that do genuinely like this record, but I feel like there are some people that give Eminem a pass purely because he shaped your childhood, and that's what I don't agree with. That being said, I do like the Paul skit. I think the one of Paul Rosenberg calling Eminem, it's funny. It's more in line with the Paul Rosenberg skits from the earlier Eminem records. The first 3 tracks aren't bad. They're decent Eminem cuts. They run a little long, but they're not horrible. Joyner Lucas was actually good. And you guys know, he made my second least favorite record of last year. He's not bad here. He can actually keep in time. And that's impressive on its own merits. But outside of that, it was interesting to see him work with Royce da 5'9" again. It is what it is. It's kind of a mediocre cut. Him making fun of trap rappers by borrowing trap rap flows doesn't do anything for me. Neither does a majority of this. I give it like a 4 out of 10. And that was my August listening log update. Hopefully you enjoyed this. I am, like I said in the beginning of the video, going out of town this upcoming week, so I don't know how much new material I'm going to be listening to. I'm going to mostly be working on projects with other people, and I'm going to try to get other projects like discography reviews filmed before I go, but we'll see what September brings. Keep the suggestions coming if you'd like. I've been Viral Rack. You guys have good days, lives, and situations, and I'll see you another day.